Okay, let's get started. Welcome, first of all, to everybody. My name is Rogier from Boxtel, and I'm running pre-sales in Axway in Benelux Nordics and in the DACH region, so the Germany region. For those of you that were hoping to see Peter Oostling as well today, I was hoping that too, but unfortunately he is off sick, so he will leave me alone today. So have to do it with me. I'll open up with one slide on Axway. I don't want to spend too much time on it. You can read it on the slides and on axway.com, of course. It's a French-based, originally France-based software vendor. Started late 90s. For those of you that believe that API management is brand new, I have some bad news. It is. We started offering our solutions late 90s, as I said. Today, our headquarters are in Phoenix for obvious US reasons, and we're with roughly for 1,500 people. So what I want to do, I'll start with a tiny little bit of history on API management, and then we'll move into the marketplace story that I want to discuss. So it's for those of you that were in the OAuth session a couple of minutes ago, this will be a little bit less technical, a little bit less detailed, but still nice, I hope. When I was talking about late 90s, we started with API management, or quite frankly, it were APIs in those days. It was like services. Clearly, nobody was talking about APIs. It was XML, it was SOAP. But we still secured. That is where we started. We offered our first XML security gateway, as it was called in those days, in 1999. And the idea was kind of exactly the same what we're doing today. There were services, most of the time web services, were offered to business partners. And the organization of banks, governments that offered those services wanted to make sure that they were offered in a secure way. So that's where we started. So you take API applications, they offer some kind of API, and then you put a gateway in between you and your business, your external business partner or your partner, to make sure that the API is delivered in a secure way. That's the story. So nothing spectacular, nothing special. Then we're moving on. If you look at like around 2010, I think ourselves, we started in 2012. There were what we called API management capabilities were added. So the number of APIs was growing. So there was a need. It started with a couple of Excel sheets, and I've seen them literally from some of our customers. There's like 5 or 10 APIs in an Excel sheet with a contact person and some endpoint details and some other details. Worked all cool. But as soon as you start to have 20 or 100, or some customers even have a couple of thousands of APIs, then it becomes, of course, a challenge to manage them. So we started to create what we called API management capabilities. And if you look at them, there's kind of two sides. So there's the more internal-oriented part. So you want people to understand what APIs are, which consumers you want to offer that API to, maybe specific security. If it's external, for example, then you might want to add some specific security for that. And then you want to create some kind of a catalog. So that's the story. What we did, and Axway was nothing different than quite a lot of other vendors. So you saw management capabilities for those internal folks, and you saw all vendors starting to offer what was called API portals in those days. And by the way, we're still doing that, so nothing special. So what we've seen is since like 10, 15 years, differs a little bit from industry to industry. So finance, for example, is a little bit more ahead, and other industries started a little bit later. But there was a huge amount of growth in APIs for all kinds of different reasons. I said banking is a little bit advanced, clearly due to PSD2, so the open banking regulations. Some other industries were a little bit more behind, but in general, and we conducted a study about a year ago with Forrester, and there are some interesting numbers, but you can probably know from your own experience that nobody's going to debate that the number of APIs is growing massively, and the importance of APIs is growing massively. The number of subscribers, so the number of people that are using APIs, is growing big time. So there's really an explosion in APIs. And a second thing that is happening, especially when I started in early this century in the integration space, you were on the left-hand side, so to say. There were literally, even at large banks, there was literally a handful of developers creating integration assets. There's two in this case. Maybe it was 3 or 4, but it wasn't that many more. It weren't that many more developers that were creating it. That was a long time ago. Then, like 10 years ago, you saw more teams. You saw more people working and creating those APIs. Clearly, more APIs as a result, because more people working on it result ends up in more APIs. And today, it states down here 10 dev teams. I've talked to one of the large banks in the Netherlands. They have 500 development teams. So 10 per team, 5,000 people, and all of them are creating APIs. That's today's reality. Clearly, not all 5,000 people, just to be fair, typically they try to work a little bit. So per team, there's a couple of people that are more focused on APIs, there's a couple that are really less focused, and somewhere in the middle. But there's a huge amount of people that are creating APIs, which clearly increases complexity and increases the number of APIs. A completely different way of complexity, so where we're looking at the number of people and the number of APIs created, a completely different complexity factor is the number of solutions that those teams are using. Where a long time ago, you typically had a single integration solution offered often by a single vendor or home build, doesn't really matter. Today, what we see in the most organizations is that they have a wide variety of solutions in place. And the funniest example, I said I was also responsible for the Nordics, a large furniture manufacturer, well known from the Nordics. They have 9 API gateways. So they literally had the entire Magic Quadrant, Gartner Magic Quadrant, top 9 providers, they are using them. It's an organization that's really decentralized. So their retail, their production unit, their bank, everything around it has the ability to select their own API gateway or integration solution, which of course is very powerful. But they end up with 9. It was quite funny. I asked the question how many, and that one down there and that one down there. It was literally the entire quadrant. Typically, you see slightly less, but you almost never see 1 or 2 anymore. So there's 3, 4, 5 gateways, the ESB type of legacy, ESB type of platforms, Kafka type based platforms, integration platforms, or Solace. There's a variety of platforms in use. So if you summarize, then what you kind of see is on the one hand side, there's hundreds of people using 3, 4, 5, or even more platforms, creating APIs in all kinds of different ways all over the organization. But probably needless to say, that is impacting success. And success, of course, the measurement, and that is maybe the most important thing that is happening, which is not on this slide, by the way, is if you move from creating APIs to kind of, if you want to see the business impact or business success of APIs, it's probably better to reuse than to look at the number created. So what we see in customers is the focus 10 years ago was completely, let's create as much as possible APIs. API first type of approaches, nothing wrong with that. We've made many years, we've made nice money with that, so no complaints. But the reality for an organization is, of course, that an API doesn't create value if you create the API, but it only starts creating value if it's reused more than once, typically really more than once, so more like 5, 10, 20 times. So that's really what you're looking for. And that complexity, so a lot of people that create a lot of APIs using all kinds of different technologies is preventing customers from being as successful from a business perspective with their APIs as they like to be. And that is what we're trying to say on this slide, and that is even more simple on this slide. So again, the same study that we did about a year ago with Forrester, 71% the business results of the respondents in this study is saying the business results of APIs, 71% says it stays behind. That is quite significant. And what we believe is the reason for that is because the focus is too much on creation and there's not enough focus on reuse. And that is, of course, what we're trying to solve with a next, maybe you can call it a next-gen API management solution or a next-gen API portal solution, to be even more specific. And that's why we introduced the marketplace. So the idea is to create, and I personally kind of liked the unified catalog. That was the name that we originally gave this product, but our marketing folks decided that marketplace sounds better. But at the end of the day, what it really is a unified catalog. So everybody is creating APIs, using all kinds of integration platforms and all kinds of integration technology. And at the end of the day, what you need a single list of all those APIs to be able to see as a subscriber, as a consumer of those APIs. And it can be the same internal developers, but it can also be business partners, and can also be, in case of public APIs, anybody, to be able to see if I want to have a certain specific set of information, or if I need a specific business function, I want to open an account at a bank, which API or APIs do I need to use? That's at the end of the day what you want in a single list, and then you want, out of that single list, you want to be able to select the APIs and subscribe to them. That's at the end of the day what you're looking for. And that's exactly what we created with our marketplace. And we're going to jump into the story in a little bit more detail, of course, but the generic idea of our marketplace is there is a set of integration assets at the bottom. Hopefully for us, there are some Axway assets on the left-hand side, of course, like our gateway. And most likely, or highly likely, there are a couple of other, in this slide, third-party solutions in place as well, like an AWS API gateway or code repository, or maybe a Kafka event bus, or maybe some Istio Envoy-based microservices that you are developing. Whatever. It might change from customer to customer, but there's a lot. What we do, we created a solution on top of that to be able to connect to all those different integration platforms to create, first of all, what we call a service registry down there. And a service registry is that unified catalog, is that single list of all the APIs that are delivered by any gateways or any of the integration solutions at the bottom. That's the first thing. Then we're going to do some magic, and I'm going to explain to you in a minute the magic, what it is. And then we'll end up in what we call an enterprise marketplace, which is really the kind of the developer.whatever.com that you see today, which is kind of the public-facing API marketplace that almost every organization today has. And then there's a little bit, of course, it's a platform, so there's a little bit of administration. We won't touch too much about that today, but you clearly need identity management, you clearly need those kind of things. And then finally, analytics. There's kind of two reasons why you need analytics. First of all, your consumers and your API product owners, so your kind of business people responsible for APIs, they want to have visibility on the number of API calls, full stop. Is it the success? So we create a really nice new API. Is it really used as often as we believe it should be? As we planned for, as we based our investment on? That's the first thing. The second thing with analytics, and we'll touch upon that quite a bit as well, is the famous monetization. So more and more often, organizations want to ask money for using their APIs. If you want to do that, and especially if you want to do it based on a pay-per-use type of model, you need to measure the use. So we're going to discuss analytics in a bit as well, which is kind of a side note. So that is really, really important. Let's start with what we are doing. So this is kind of the overview of what we are doing with our API, with our marketplace. So first of all, we need to discover all new APIs. That's a really, really important thing to understand. And we want to do that, first of all, fully automatic. And we want to be able to do that to any underlying integration pattern. That's why we created a set of agents. And that's what we're going to discuss in a minute. Then, if we have discovered the APIs, we want to validate and secure. So and there's a little bit of sidetrack around quality assurance in that specific process, validate and secure part of the process as well, that we're going to discuss in a minute. Then we're going to, typically APIs are a little bit fine-grained. So the next two steps, curate and manage and productize, are about creating API products that are typically built upon a couple of fine-grained APIs. So if you say, for example, I want to open a bank account, that's typically not a single API call. It's a couple of API calls for an average bank that you, especially as an external consumer, don't want to know about. So the bank needs to offer you the APIs all together in one go to be able to subscribe to the create me a banking account API, or maybe API product. That's what we're going to do in create and manage. And then if we have products, we can add price plans. We're going to discuss that in a second as well, of course, for your monetization. They can be free. You don't pay, you still measure, or they can be paid and then pay at the end of the day. And then finally, grow adoption. That is where we end up with nice websites, colors, logos, all those kind of things. Really show again the products that we have created to anybody who's allowed to see them. So let's jump in a little bit of detail. First, we're going to the discover phase. So discovery is all about agents. So what we have created agents. That's a tiny bit of code that we want you to deploy as close as possible to all your integration solutions. And there's no black magic. Let's be fair about that. What does the code do? It calls the management APIs of the integration platform of your choice. So, and then there can be a little bit misunderstanding. So management, every single API management solution, or Kafka, or legacy ESB solution, all of them, they offer interfaces to ask, for example, the question, was a new API created in your platform? And yes, okay, very cool. Can I have the definition file of that new API? Can I have the documentation of that new API? So those type of API calls is what we are doing towards the Azure API Gateway, for example, or the Axway one, or to Kafka, or to Solus, or to, well, there are many flavors. That's what we're doing, which means that any new API that is published, or any updated API, of course, new API version that is published in any of the underlying gateway that is under control of one of our agents, will be automatically populated into our platform. And that population means the API name, of course, definition file, whether it's a WSDL or OWASP or event-driven API, doesn't really matter. There is a definition file. There is possibly some documentation, not mandatory, but possibly some documentation in them. Then we'll fetch that as well. There's endpoint information typically that we want to have. And there might be some specifics depending on the specific API that we're working with that we also want to have. So anything that's relevant, we'll grab it and we'll bring it to the service registry. That was a big catalog that we will discuss in the next step. And all of that is done automatically, typically on a scheduled basis. So this is not second business, of course, so we're typically setting it like once an hour or once a day, doesn't really matter. It's changing literally by the second, but we're on a regular basis, we're connecting to those things. And that looks like this. So this is the end result that you will have. If you go to our solution and you go to topology, then, and of course, I selected a topology with a couple of different vendor solutions in there. So you see, for example, there is an AWS API Gateway fully connected. There is, for example, an Apigee Edge gateway connected. Azure is partially connected, so that means that one of the two agents, so the discovery agents, might be running, and the traceability for the monitoring might be disconnected for whatever reason. So you can choose, of course, to connect both of them or connect one of them, or you can do a manual. If for specific reasons, you can also do a manual import, of course. So then you press a button and then you get all the information. So all of that is possible, but I just wanted to show you. So there's a couple of gateways connected, nicely listed, everything cool, no specific problems. So we're good to go with the first step. So now that we have all the APIs in our list, we can start to validate and secure. And there's one thing that I found quite interesting. So you get a full list. Let me start with showing you that full list. So it looks like this, no black magic. So there's a bunch of APIs, and then there's filtering options based on text, based on type, based on owner, based on all kinds of things that you can set up as a platform administrator yourself. And then, of course, if you want to know more information about a specific API, so I did, and my team is really creative, I have to admit, the Pet Store demo OS3. If you detail that one out, then first of all, you get all kinds of details. So you get one endpoint. It's not used in any asset or product yet, and we'll discuss that in a second. There are some details about who created it. There are some details about the timing, and you can get quite a lot more information. And what is, of course, interesting, if you scroll down, then you get all the methods, and you can start testing, and you can download OS3 down there. So if you want to have the specification file, you can see that there should be an endpoint. Oh yeah, that's, if you click on this one, then there would have been an endpoint available for you. So all the information is available in different ways to be able to decide, do I want to use this API? Yes or no. We're still on the small fine-grained API level. There's one thing which is quite interesting. What you also can do is, as what I just explained, 500 teams working on creating APIs. We all know 60% of the developers are okay-ish with APIs, creating anything, including APIs. 20% is really cool, completely focused on APIs, quality, high quality, and 20% is horrible. That's the reality for anything that is being created. So what you also can do is close down the service registry to start with for anybody but your integration competence center experts. So a couple of people, literally maybe 5, maybe 10 people maximum, and they check any API before it is made available for anybody else except the developer. They can check the quality. And there's no way around it because an API can't be published in anything unless it's approved by these people. So that's a QA type of activity. And of course, it gives the team the opportunity to put it slightly more positive. It gives them the opportunity to improve those developers that need some guidance and need some support and need some help to make a high quality OAuth 2 compliant is what we just learned, OAuth 2 compliant API. So that's a kind of a small side step, but in my view, especially for larger organizations, really, really important to make sure that the quality is, that any API that is made available for internal or external, and especially external consumers, at least meets the minimum requirements on security, on documentation, on all those kind of things that you want them to have. So that is a small side step that you can quite easily do with such a single centralized solution. So that's the second thing. So we have collected the APIs through agents. We've created a service registry, this unified catalog. That's what it comes down to. We've done nothing with it yet, but we have the full information available. Okay, now the next steps become, so we have decided to give you the opportunity to kind of create API products in 2 steps. So in the first step, we're going to create assets. So the kind of the assets, so we're taking typically more than one API, and we're creating assets out of that. Assets is still an internally focused, so inside your organization focused kind of mini API product that nobody really is using, but that is valuable to create real API products, because that will be the next step, of course. So we are going to curate, organize resources, and then, of course, we can kind of start deciding, okay, this is a specific asset focused on a specific market or a specific target audience. So those kind of decisions is what we can start taking. And that looks like this. So on the left-hand side, you see create an asset. Well, no surprise. You need to select one or more of the APIs that we saw in the service registry. And then you can combine them, and then you can start to create an open banking asset, for example, whatever that may mean. And of course, included in an asset can be some documentation, can be some contact details, all those kinds of things can be added if you like to do that. So that's the first step. And if we then have assets, we can start to combine assets into API products. And an API product, again, a little bit the same, and I'm going to jump to the examples. Again, a little bit of the same thing as we did with assets. So we first of all, we need to select one or more assets, and we can do some documentation again and all those kinds of things. And then the interesting bit starts, because then we can start to select monetization plans. And what I said, you can select free or you can select paid. You can start with free. A free price plan definitely has a meaning, because there is still some kind of SLA attached to that. Because once again, we are going to provide this to internal consumers and possibly external consumers. So you might want to offer kind of an SLA? Is it office hours support? Is it 24/7 support? What's the downtime? All those kind of things is what you can attach to a free price plan. It's not mandatory, but you can describe those kind of things. And then clearly you can do paid price plans. And there's kind of two flavors today, and we're always open to discuss with any customer more paid price plans. But today you have kind of a fixed fee for a fixed amount of calls in a certain period. So for example, 100 euros for 1,000 calls per month. And then that's the gold level, and then the platinum level is 10,000. It's 1,000 euros for 10,000 calls per month again. And there should be, at least in my humble opinion, there should be SLAs attached to that. But there is a price tag. That's your first option. That's more like, let's say, a fixed price type of setup. And then you need to decide what happens after the last call has been made. So you can block any traffic, or you can do more smooth, that slows down a little bit, for example, that you are still able to do 1,100 calls as well, and then it kind of stops. So that is your first paid price plan option. The second option is really pay per use. So I pay 2 cents per API call. Both are possible. If you want to do, there's one remark. If you want to do 1,000 calls and you want to prevent users from doing more calls, then you need, of course, to ask the agent, that's the other way around, if a consumer subscribes to such an API, then the agent needs to ask to the underlying integration gateway, again through APIs, to set a specific policy. Stop after 1,000 calls. So it's not the agent, the discovery agent is not just popping up APIs into our platform, it's also asking underlying integration solutions to set specific policies, or to ask, Rogier is trying to sign up for this API. Are we okay with that? Yes. The AWS gateway might say, yes, I'm okay with that. Okay, cool. Then please provide Rogier the access details by email or in our platform or through a webhook in any other way that you like to do it. But the gateway at the end of the day is always responsible for handling the traffic. This marketplace solution is not a traffic handling solution in any way. The gateway is responsible. We're not the man in the middle trying to arrange. We're on top. The gateway always is responsible for the traffic. And if you want to do that, you can ask the gateway to deliver some metering data to us, for example, for monetization, but that's about it. And that's not mandatory, that's optional, of course. So if you don't want to do it, and we bought a bank that did a couple of Kafka calls, like 18 billion a month. So I strongly suggest to not start monitoring those kind of traffic volumes, because the value is, of course, quite limited and the cost is quite high. So that's the product foundry. And then you'll end up with a set of products like you've seen before. So we have had single APIs in the service registry. We've had a couple of APIs combined to an asset catalog, and then a couple of assets combined into products, added price tags to it for free or paid. And then now we have a product foundry. And then finally, we can move to the nice front-end pages. We can start offering the products in our API portal, or as we call it today, marketplace. And I'm immediately jumping. This is just a screenshot of one of our customers that we use. You still see a tiny little bit of the Axway things down here, but it's different colors. There's logos. There are some nice categories that you see down here. there might be some documentation and all kind of nice things. And of course, the core of the solution is what you see down here, that these are the API products that this specific organization created. And again, there's all kinds of filtering options which are based on all the details that you added during your product creation. And as far as I know, I'm not 100% sure, but there's a full text search possibility, even in all documentation and all of those kind of things. So you can look up any specific API by searching and browsing this catalog. And typically, organizations today have a more limited set of API products, so more tens to a couple of hundreds. On the other hand, our first launching customer, Engie in France, this probably you know the energy company, energy waste management water company, and they, after 1 month, they had 300 API products already. So it can grow very fast if you're big. That is why search capabilities are really, really important, and that's definitely an area that we are investing quite a bit upon. And that is also why tagging and all those kind of things, descriptions, tagging, all those kinds of things are really, really, really important. So that was the process, and then we have insights, which is also quite important. If you want to drive business on APIs or API products, is maybe what I should say, then first of all, your business people need to have basic data about usage. And what is really important, this can be used to feed your billing solution. So the marketplace today, and I'm pretty sure that will stay the same for the future, our marketplace is not a billing engine. So we don't create invoices. What we do is, for those of you that were used to be in telecom a long time ago, there was this called detail records. That's exactly what we deliver. So we deliver you all the details that you need to create an invoice in your SAP, Oracle, or cloud-based, brand new, modern billing solution. And then the billing solution is, of course, responsible to create the bill and to get it paid. That's not what we are. That's not the business that we are in. But we're definitely in the business of sharing the details with you. So it is really about making visible what is happening in your API management environment, both for your internal people, your business people, as well as for the consumers. For sure, so any consumer always can see their basic consumption, which in my personal opinion is quite fair. If you subscribe to any plan that contains any payment, then it might be fair to offer them some visibility. And of course, it gives you the possibility to make better informed decisions. And there's a couple of nice screenshots, although quite a lot of them. There's one remark that I want to make down here. The traceability agent is collecting the information. So as soon as an API call happens, there's an event being sent to us using the traceability agent. Again, an API that all gateways and other integration solutions are offering. We're only collecting header information, though. So we're not collecting bodies. That has two reasons. First, we don't want to be GDPR compliant, all the data bullshit that is around there. That's the first reason. The second reason, it's way too big. And the third reason, if you want to do detailed analysis, go to your gateway. So we don't want to know. We do want to know header information because we want to know date and time and receiver. And of course, we want to know success. Was the call successful, yes or no? So that's all in the header. That is what we want to know, and that's what we can show to you. We will not be able, and we will never be able to show you body. So if you want to be debugging and all those kind of nice things, then go one level down. And then finally, of course, we can create some nice API health reports or dashboards or whatever you want to call them. If you don't like, unlikely, but still, if you don't like our really nice reports, then we're also more than happy to share the information that we have, again, through an API, a management API of our platform, and then you can forward it to Splunk or ELK or what Power BI or whatever nice solution you are using today to report on if you really want to do that. So with that, we're starting to move towards the end of the story. So what I've tried to show you today is that we started a long time ago, 20, 25 years ago, we started with securing APIs, focused on creating APIs. That's what we did for like 10 years. After that, we started to focus on, let's say, everything around API management, API portals. And then for kind of two main reasons, we moved on to what we consider to be the next level. And those two main reasons were kind of a lot of APIs being created by a lot of developers. And on the other hand, a lot of different technologies that are being used inside organizations to create and secure those APIs. Those two factors combined led us to the conclusion that we need an independent management plane, as we call it today, which is the Axway marketplace, and that covers an automatic way to collect all APIs that are running around somewhere down there, that offers a service registry to get a full list of all those APIs, that offers functionality to productize those APIs in a two-step asset product approach is what we implemented. And finally, that offers a marketplace where you can offer all those APIs to specific internal or external consumers in a, let's say, customizable way. And that can be different. I've shown you one screenshot. We had a discussion with Nestle. They have, as you know, like 92 brands. So they want 92 Mars.developer.com and Purina.developer.com. That's all what they want to have. That's perfectly possible because you can create different front ends based on the same global set, based on, at the end of the day, the same service registry globally for Nestle, and then take out specific parts that offer. So all of that's possible. And then finally, inside, if you want to be more successful from a business perspective with your APIs, then you definitely need to offer your business folks monitoring capabilities, high level, and you need to offer monitoring capabilities to your consumers, especially if you want them to start charging them. So if you want to open up the monetizations. With that, I'm going to open up for a couple of questions because there's a little bit of time left. Yes, so if there's any question, feel free to raise it now. Yeah.
My question is, how is Axway monetizing this? Is it a percentage of the, so let's say there's a price per call, is it a percentage of that? Or is there also like a SaaS model in which you pay monthly or?
Yeah, we're not, nice suggestion though, but that's not our currently the main price metric or two price metrics are the number of APIs, so the discovery, so the number of APIs that we discover down here, and the number of subscriptions down here. Those are the two main price metrics. And then since we're running this, correctly stated, on AWS, if you want to do monitoring, then we charge a small fee for that to cover up for the AWS cost. But quite frankly, that's not the main. So the main driver today is number of APIs and number of subscriptions. On the other hand, this is a fairly new solution. So we introduced the unified catalog like 2.5 years ago. And last summer, we started with Engie really on this solution. So we're definitely more than willing to discuss any other pricing model with specific prospects if the model makes sense for that specific setup. Yes?
Yes. Then you talked about installing an agent near or at the gateways that you want to automatically discover the APIs.
Yes.
What if you want some APIs not to be automatically discovered or added to the catalog?
That's possible. Yeah, it's configuration. So typically you don't want to do that because, for example, APIs in the middle of their development, you don't want to discover them yet. So you can configure the API to collect specific APIs in a specific stage. It differs a little bit from gateway to gateway how they manage their, let's say, staging, how they manage their development cycles. But typically, that's first of all what you want to do. And then if you want to add any specific other rules, we can add it in our agent, assuming, of course, that the underlying gateway is supporting that. That is always crucial. For there's differences between all gateway brands. And that's why you have different agents per brand to cope for these kind of differences. But you can definitely configure for some APIs not to be discovered at all. Maybe for some internal only APIs or whatever might be a reason to do that. And you definitely want APIs to have a certain maturity before they are discovered to avoid that people start working on half-baked solutions. So yeah, there's definitely ways to do that. And on proximity, of course, a reasonable question. You're typically not allowed to install it next to SaaS gateways. So technically, there's no distance requirement, of course, because it's making API calls. So you can install it basically anywhere. It's just smart to do it as close as possible, especially if you are in control. If you're not, then you can install it anywhere as long as there's internet connectivity to the backend APIs of your gateway. So technically, there's no real limitation. And quite frankly, there's not a huge amount of data that agents are discovering. It doesn't really matter where it's installed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll take you next and go ahead, please.
I have you have also hybrid like a marketplace. Maybe the customer has that or on-prem and you have actually connected to the environment. And also, do you have a migration plan to really go from on-prem to?
Yeah, this solution is currently not available for on-prem installation. That's not because it's technically not feasible, because it's all containerized. But we don't want to spend our R&D folks on creating nice things like installation manuals and all those kind of nice things. So today it's SaaS. Axway is a hybrid company, is committed to being hybrid. So over time, we'll definitely make it available for on-prem. Then to answer your kind of other question, what we typically see is that customers today have a couple of different portals per solution or per kind of, that's the one hand side. On the other hand side, you see some customers that created custom built kind of generic solutions because there's not a lot of vendors today that are offering such a solution, not to say there's hardly any. So migrating from either of those requires a little bit of work to move them from a portal that's connected to a single gateway, install an agent and reroute all the APIs to this solution. And then custom versus buying a solution is a discussion that we're having with especially a lot of large banks in Europe. Because due to PSD2, they had to create some, and they created some kind of solution. And that, of course, is a completely different, that's a little bit calling their baby ugly discussion, which is always nice. So that's a kind of per customer base discussion that we are having in Germany with the large banks, in the Netherlands, a famous bank in Belgium, that's downstairs as well, which we're talking about this solution. So that's kind of a really customer by customer discussion. There's not really a generic statement. On the other hand, typically it's not huge today. So typically those banks look at developer.whatever your bank is.com, and you'll typically find 5, 10, 20, 30 real public APIs. So even if you need to migrate that today, it won't be a 3-year, 10 people project, to put it mildly. So that should be doable and possible.
The gateways that you support, are they listed below, or are they more?
Yes, they are listed below. Let me double check. It's MuleSoft.com, AWS, Azure, Apigee, and there is Istio Envoy, which is a gateway, but which is more like a standard Microsoft technology. And then what is not listed down here is SDK. So if you have a gateway, then first of all talk to us. So Software AG, for example, was requested by Engie. So that will be available soon. So first of all, we can take a look, is this a gateway that is often used in the market for which it makes sense that we create an agent? That's the first discussion. If the answer is no, then we have an SDK. And what does an SDK mean? It talks to our site, to our platform, using the standard APIs. And there's a standard interface. So all you have to do is connect your gateway's APIs to our APIs. That's the translation that you need to make. So if you want to discover APIs, just to give you an example, then we want to know new API, updated API, documentation, definition file, those kind of things. And we've done that with Solus. That's what I also mentioned, which is not on the list because it's kind of a community agent. And the Solus guys worked in 20 days, they created a basic discovery agent. So if you're a little bit hang loose on Go, because that's the language that we're using, then it's definitely possible to create a discovery agent in a limited amount of time. Again, assuming that you know your gateway and that the gateway is offering these management APIs, and especially IBM Data Power, for example, really legacy gateways were not really developed with such a mindset. So that might be a challenge, those kinds. That's not what we can do anything about, or well, you can call IBM, but that's about it.
I mostly work with SAP API.
Yeah, that's possible. You're not the first one asking that one. So that's definitely one for product management, and sooner or later we will have it. Yes, because there are many large SAP questions. One, I think there's somebody standing up in the back. So there's one more final question that goes to you, and then you can come to me, of course, afterwards. And Mark and I are downstairs as well, so no, feel free.
You mentioned Engie, but who is the most successful customer of Axway in monetizing their APIs, and why are they successful?
Ooh, that's a tricky question. I don't know a lot of details about the success of Engie, so I'm not going to, because that's in our French team, and that's the only region that I'm not responsible for yet. Or no, joking. Success, monetization, my first remark would be monetization is new, fairly new, is really challenging. The most successful customer that I'm aware of is way before we introduced this one, that's Dun & Bradstreet. They created an API and included it in Salesforce. So the big Dun & Bradstreet customers, for those of you that don't know them, they're credit scoring. So if you add a supplier or a customer in your Salesforce system, then or in any system, you can do a credit score through Dun & Bradstreet. And they did this in Salesforce. They included a button, and then for mid-sized customers, if you press the button, €1. That is what they introduced I think about 5 years ago, which obviously is really nice, because copying the name into the DunandBradstreet.com website, putting in your credit card and all those kind of things is a nightmare. So it's really nice and easy. And I only know their revenue for the first month, which was 5 million. They never told me for the next, what was it, 80, 90 months, but trust me, that grew big time. So I think that if you want to be successful in monetizing your API, you today we really need to have a kind of an information service where people are willing to pay for the information that you're sharing. Those are kind of the key examples. Other examples are really challenging. I know, for example, BMW, also such a big customer of ours, they really try to do B2B type, so Google Maps introduced in their cars or Spotify or whatever on the screen in their car, but I seriously doubt if that was really successful, because what's the value, who's willing to pay? So that is really difficult, and that will be one of the key challenges, in my humble opinion, for business people, because let's be fair, we are a software company, will be a software company. We deliver you the tools to be hopefully as successful as you can be, but monetization is really difficult and challenging. Unless, once again, you have a very clear information service that people are immediately willing to pay this famous Dun & Bradstreet €1 for. Yes, with that, I'd like to say thank you. And if you have any questions, Mark, he's in the back, and myself, we will be downstairs at our booth. Thanks a lot.